Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Mobile Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Leppert. And tonight, my co-host is none other than Jacob Sklenner. Jacob, how you doing?
I am just lethally good right now.
I like hearing that. Tonight, on a very special edition of the Whitetail Apprentice series, we have Mr. Greg Litzinger here to talk about some rubs. We're going to do a rubbing it with Litz. How you doing?
What's going on?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, drinks are involved, and this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So, I want to start this off with a little bit of your background, and I want you to lead in to your current situation. We were talking a little bit about it with your injury and everything, or your surgery. So I'd like you to kind of dive into that a little bit for us, and then we'll get into the rubs.
All right. See, what am I, 40, 47? So bow hunting at 14 to 33 years. I'm bow hunting public for 33 years. Yeah, I've always been, I've always been fascinated by rubs. It's kind of been, early part because, something that my dad always we always found together. So it kind of always gravitated towards rubs and tracks. And I kind of set the tone with how I became, a hunter, following tracks and rubs. I didn't get into the whole bed hunting thing till, further on, years into my hunting, career. But yeah, I like rubs. I like big deer.
And you cannot lie.
Yeah, I like big rubs, but I cannot lie.
I like turtles, kid. I like rubs.
Yeah. I like rubs.
T-shirt.
And speaking of an injury, I had 2 wrist surgeries this past year. First one failed, so I had to go back and get another one. They fused my wrists together, and I'm currently wearing a brace and trying to shoot a bow with a mouth tab, left-handed bow, left eye, mouth tab. It has been it hasn't been going as smoothly as I thought it was going to go. It's
so you're a right-handed shooter.
Yes.
And you are right eye dominant.
Yes.
And you have now switched to using your left eye and a mouth tab.
Correct.
Let us pray.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
It's I thought, it's like, I'm a competitive person, so it's like I like challenges, so it's like, okay, this will be, I can do this. It's easy. It hasn't been as easy as I thought. It's been a little humbling. It's like, man, I'm good because like I'll shoot like 3 days, and I'm, I go to the local range. I was taking my daughter out, before she went to school, and like I was hitting, we're shooting field targets. Like I'm hitting the target. I'm like, man, this is gonna be easy. As soon as I put it on like a 3D target where there's a risk of losing your arrow and all that, like a real deer, it's like it went like my actually just like plummeted.
So wow.
Basically, like with the mouth tab for me, you're basically, your finger blasted. Like if you already got a trigger release and you're just hammering the trigger release, so it's like you just have to like, it's the weirdest feeling in the world because like if you grip the mouth tab too hard, the arrow comes out wonky. If you don't grip it tight enough, like it moves and like starts actually like messing with your teeth. It's like it's not pleasant to say the least. And the guys that do it, the Remy Warrens, the Dudley did it, and guys that have to do it all the time, and you guys are on another level. Guys have made it. People that make it work, and they have to make it work. Hats off to you because it is. It's been a challenge for me.
So would you say that you basically have oral target panic?
There's a possibility, yeah.
It sounds like when you're just aiming at a large, basically a blob,
yeah.
and you basically know that you have to miss bigger than hell,
yeah,
then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But then when that thought comes into your head, so
yeah.
try to maybe like, well, I can't tell you to like do a shot before you go, but you should. I mean, you should just not give a shit and try it. I mean, I know that's not easy.
Yeah,
Arrows aren't free.
it's like I said, like some days I'm on. Like the other morning, I went out like cold shot. It was like money, and like broadhead. Like I was grouping well at 20 first shot. I mean, and I'm aiming at the back of the 10 ring because I'm only shooting 46 pounds, 26 of drawing. I don't have a lot of. There's not a lot happening with there. So I'm like, I'm a shooting for the heart kind of guy. Now I got to shoot at the back of the 10 ring, which is a whole nother thing I'm dealing with because
It's a
it's like,
mental thing.
dude, because I'm like, I go right to the pocket. I'm like, well, that's a bad idea. I don't have, there's just not enough energy to break, bone if I hit it. So, and it's like, I put it on there, it's like I'm shooting good. And the next morning, it's like, I come out, and it's like I was telling you earlier, like the arrow with the broadhead, it's just like, it goes like 6 inches right or like 8 inches left, sideways, fishtailing. And it's like, and then I get angry and it's like, find inner peace because like a part of my if I was like 20 years old, this happened, I would have snapped this bow in half. I would have just took it to the nearest tree and just beat it in the submission and then and went and bought another one. But I'm old now and that's not conducive to adulthood anymore. So I have to just sit there and just like take it. It's like, go get my arrow, regroup, try it again, and then it's like, okay, I'm on track. But it's like, if my first shot, I need to, before I can go hunting, I need to have like a week straight of cold shots with broadheads money. Or me personally, I can't go out there because I'm not going to just go out there and just wing it, because my luck, I'll have a deer of a lifetime at 20 yards. My arrow come out sideways, like it's fishtailing, and then I hit the deer and there's nothing going into the deer because all the energy is whipping back and forth.
Damn.
But it's dumb. But I love it.
really, really hope you get to feeling better, and I'll be happy when you can get that bow back in your hand and get to shooting again.
Probably January is probably the earliest that I'll be strong enough. Like I'm, that it's going to take a while. Like I got no strength in this hand. Like take my hand out of this brace. Like the wrist don't move. I can't really grip anything because there's just no strength. It's like I can move my fingers, but that's about it. Like trying to pick like this glass I'm holding. If it was full of water, me try to pick it up from the top, it's a struggle. There's just nothing there. It's like dead.
Man, Josh would be eating this up. Josh is a physical therapist, but he's currently at an NSYNC concert. So,
is it really NSYNC?
I just made that up in my head.
Okay, because I'm just sad that I believed it for a second.
Oh, trust me, you could believe it. You still haven't seen the shirts off dances that Josh used to do. His little videos he used to make.
That's just
yeah.
We'll
get a hold of that video and cut that in here. But Josh would be able to give you a lot of really good advice. I always make fun of him, or at least I used to, until I discovered that his profession was actually like beyond useful. Literally, if I start having something tightening up, hurting, pulled something, whatever, Josh will be like, do this, this, and this. He'll send me YouTube videos, and then it's like a miracle from Jesus, and I'm fixed. And it's like, what's that?
Josh, what do you think of this? Oh, come on.
Yeah. He'd like send you 2 YouTube videos and you'd be like, oh, it's a miracle.
Yeah, he talked to me at the expo a little bit.
Okay.
Like, I've had some guys and he straight up told me, he goes, this is going to be a long recovery time and it's, they won't even know, like I won't even, Dr. and I, and it'll probably be a year before I have full range of motion. Well, what's left of full range of motion, because they did a fusion of 2 bones. So it could be good. I have pretty good range of motion like before, or it could just be shit. We don't know yet until, we start working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So,
speaking something that you might, something that I guess we're talking about today, that you might have difficulty with if it was your right hand was rubs. So,
Get it?
So getting into the topic of rubs, excellent segue. Um, so basically the strategy, this series is taking it from the most 30,000 foot view basic that we can get and narrowing it down to something that is extremely advanced and then something that you can use in your hunting strategy. So when we're talking about rubs in general, they're a method of communication. What do you think is most essential, and why do you think deer make rubs? And this might differ in the time of year, but like, why do you think deer make rubs? Just explain the use of them to deer to the listener.
Growing up, my dad he always said it's just a buck's travel route. That's where he feels comfortable traveling. Be it early season rut or late season, like we get a lot of rubs pop up after a shotgun season mid-December because the bucks are forced into new areas. So he always said it's just where they feel comfortable traveling, and usually it's on the edge of cover or in some thick stuff. So I've always just kind of ran with that. It's like that's where he feels. When I see a big rub, outside of like a field edge rub, or I don't really pay no mind to field edge rubs because we all know they're nighttime rubs. Like the big scrapes on the field edges. So, but I get excited when I see rubs just on the edge of security cover. Like he's just close enough to cover where I'm like, I could picture him, daylight in here, because one jump, he's in thick stuff, but it's not so thick where it's a struggle to get through. Because I don't, as much as they want to be safe and live, deer, in like the big wood sections, they're not running through laurels 24/7. It's damn near impossible. Like they just like, I've never seen it. Like I've been hunting a long time, and they bust through that laurel. But if you're just cruising, minding your own business, and there's no reason to be in crap, or you're going to be in the crap, So my thing with rubs is communication and travel routes to and from either an early season food to bedding, or come the rut. They're the pre-rut. They're looking for does, and then come the rut, doe bedding areas, and then late season, like kind of core areas or security cover.
So why do you think they feel the need to mark their travel route? Like, do you think they're doing it to communicate to other deer? Do you think that they're doing it for, I don't know, their own reference? I assume it's for other deer, but kind of, I guess, what's your mentality on that? Like,
I think it's
why
just
a deer might do that.
Marking their turf. You hunt beds a lot, and they will rub close to their bedding area in certain areas, because they're just marking hey, this is my zone, this is my spot, leave me alone. But like a travel corridor, I used to run cameras, old white flag cameras 20 years ago, big old cantankerous ones, and I would get more does when a buck would hit a rub. I would get does come up and rub their face on it and smell it, and I would get more does after a buck rubbed it because there's fresh scent on this thing. So like does it was like a magnet for does. It's a weird, pretty neat experience to watch this, and this was 20 years, even longer than that. Damn, isn't that long? Oh, yeah, so 20 plus years. I noticed like if does are attracted to rubs, well, and then other bucks will be attracted to rubs, but the bigger, older bucks sometimes will just stay on the out. I'll get a picture of them, but they never rub the rub. They're just downwind checking it. That makes sense.
So, yeah, that adds to my next question, and we're just getting some more basic stuff out of the way here first. With them being downwind, do you think rubs serve as more of a scent sign? Do you think they're read through scent? Or do you think that they can be sometimes visual? I feel like the human tendency is to think of them as visual, but I'm curious to find out, what percentage of it do you think is a scent sign versus a visual sign?
I think it's both, because I've had, especially regarding the does, especially in like the breeding season, I find a lot of does will come in from all different directions after a buck has spent some, like he's had to put some anger into that rub. It's not like he's just going to like break it and move on. But like if he's really digging into like a tree, he's really like a travel corridor or almost even like a signpost rub. If he's really putting a lot of effort into it, he's there for, a minute or two rubbing. I mean, I shit you not, within a few hours, a doe is going to come in, a doe group or single doe is going to come in and smell that rub from years of running cameras on them. But I think it's a mixture of both, because you can see them, we can see them. The deer got to be able to see them. I know I don't know exactly what spectrum they see or what a rub looks like on a tree, but I think it's probably more scent, but I do believe that visual comes into play.
Can you talk about real quick, just to kind of give everybody a feel for the situation you're in, the state you hunt, or states, and the populations and sort of terrain, if you will?
Yeah. New Jersey. Most of my hunting is in New Jersey, but I do hunt, PA, New York, Delaware. I used to hunt Kentucky a lot before I got married, had kids. And one thing I find with, mountainous terrain is a lot of the rubs will be more terrain based than versus, marsh, kind of more, I wouldn't say random, but flatland, they kind of will match the terrain, not elevation, but like edges, terrain edge. Oh, it's what's the word I'm looking for?
Like the edge of cover,
What two types of terrain meet? I'm drawing a blank.
edge, transition.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah. So I find a lot of similarities, with flatlands in any state, but once you start getting into more mountainous regions, usually the rubs are more terrain based, certain elevations, the thermal tunnel, down low, where the hub scrapes and everything are.
Okay.
But what about New Jersey? Sorry, New Jersey. It's very more populated state. We have a liberal buck harvest. You can kill 5 bucks if you buy all your tags. And it's been like that for a long time. So the age class in New Jersey is not something. There's not many 4-year-olds running around the woods.
$5.
Yeah, you buy all your tags, guns, bow. You can kill 3 with the bow and 2 with the gun.
Oh my God.
And there's talk that they might want to increase that to possibly 7. I don't know if that's going to come to fruition or not, but yeah.
How many does can you kill?
I can kill 4 in one zone, and it depends on the zone. Like there's one zone I hunt, you can kill 1 deer, buck or doe. They got hit with the blue tongue or EHD for a couple years in a row, so it's like you can kill 1 deer. That's it. We have like weird zoning because one side of the street you can kill whatever, it's liberal harvest, and then you go literally across the road and you can kill 1 deer, and it's like, well, it's the same, like it's just a road, they're going to cross it, but I'm like, just the way the zones are mapped out from many years ago,
They should make it 20. They should really just go for it all the way and see if they can wipe them all out.
Dude.
Yeah. It's weird, like we have certain zones open early, early September, other zones open end of September. They got some zones like I have antler point restrictions on zones I hunt, the one town over or one zone over, or 2 zones over. You can shoot spikes. That's a weird, like it's a weird layout. It's very confusing to like a non-resident. Like I got friends that won't even come hunt New Jersey because first of all, it's expensive. Even for me as a resident, like we got to buy my license for 30, was it 35? And then the hunt permit, I got to buy a permit, and then I got to buy a buck stub, and I hunt 3 zones. So it's $30 a pop for each zone. Then I got to buy a buck stub. So if I want to hunt in November, it costs me $120 on top of that. It's like a non-resident license, basically.
That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
Huh.
But that's it's very challenging. Like some years, like we'll have a good crop of like young bucks, like good solid 1.5 years, some good 2-year-olds, and they're kind of dumb. We have a long muzzleloader season, and our shotgun season's right at like the second rut. a lot of deer will get killed. They're nice deer when you're like, man, I passed that deer like 3 times. You see, and I'm happy for the guy that killed it, but I'm like, man, I let that deer walk like 3 times, and it's like he had like everything you look for, and it's like, so it's like then you're like back down to zero again because like all the up and comings were killed. So like last year, I had the one place I want to kill a piney buck, so I only have one. He's barely Pope young. That's the biggest deer I had. Might have been 125 pushing it. That was the biggest deer I had on camera or I seen. Other years I might see a 140 or 150.
That is rough, dude. The deer abortions are really tough to deal with when you.
We're just getting into all sorts of
We're
terminology.
diving
that
into
Josh
it
wouldn't
right now.
approve of.
We're a no holds barred podcast. I mean, it's tough though, and I think a lot of people, we've got a lot of listeners in the Midwest, and I think they need to hear that because they think, from the perspective of a Midwesterner,
Yeah.
I used to tell people in the South and the Northeast and everything, like, just shut up and quit crying. There's big deer everywhere, and you can just like do what I do, and like, there's so many different hurdles in all these different states. And I mean, clearly there are big deer in each state, but man, the hurdles you got to jump through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's weird, like the public, like I've hunted in a lot of different states, and baiting's legal, crossbow's legal, and like we have I mean, you can start certain zones from second week of September all the way to January 31st. You can hunt every day, Sundays included. So we have a long season. You can shoot a lot of does, you can shoot a lot of bucks. So, sometimes to get a deer that's 4 or 5 years old can be a challenge. There's some years I don't run across a deer I want to shoot. So it's like, well, I'll just start whacking some does, like I got no problem shooting does.
Heck yeah. That's the best thing you can do in that situation. Damn. All right. Keep us going, Jacob.
All right. All right. Back to rubs. So I've always been curious, and you're talking about, I learned a lot from you on rubs, actually. This is the first name I brought up when we were considering someone for rubs. And I've heard a lot of podcasts where you've talked about this. When you're talking about travel direction and travel route with a buck and using rubs to establish that. Now you're a believer in directional rubs, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. What situations do you see a rub that you believe is directional? Like when you see a rub, how are you like, all right, this one is clearly traveling in this direction at this time?
I used to, back in the day, like before we had smartphones and everything, like I always had a camera with me, and I would take pictures, and I would tape the rub. I would do height, I'd measure how tall it is, time marks, diameter of the tree. And I had a long data for years. I kept this thing, and I really got into rubs because, pre-trail camera era, like that's all you had. You had tracks of rubs. So I had a whole database of rubs, and I really got into like I won't call it science, but I guess like looking at every rub and taking pictures and looking for some similarities in rubs. Like, all right, this rub is rubbing hard on the right. He's got some type of something on his right antler, or I got tine marks, chest high, and it's like it's all heading, say northwest. Well, that guy's like, what's northwest? Okay, well, there's no food really. I got food behind me. So northwest, he's going back to bed. So that kind of got me into like a directional thing. I'm like, okay, food is behind me. He's going back to bed. And then I would try to just take that rub line as far as I could. And sometimes, there might only be 3 rubs on it, and you might be going 500 yards to find those 3 rubs heading that direction. And I would data log every rub. I mean, 270 degrees, and like I had a nice system, and I don't know. I think someone stole all that data from me, but I had like a whole little picture book. But I do believe directional rubs serve a purpose, especially in the early season and during the rut, connecting those zones and bedding the feed.
You touched on so many different things that I was going to ask. So you just ruined this whole thing, giving too much good information. I'm just kidding. I love that, man. And so what I want to do is I really want to focus on quantifying some of these things, because I feel like when someone hears a rub line, they're like, oh, I don't have any of those. But like if you're going 200, 300, 400, 500 yards between a rub, they might have been on rub lines this whole time and not realized it. So
Yeah.
let's say you come across a rub that you really like. Okay, so this rub, for whatever reason, you love it. I'm assuming what you're looking for is a high rub and it's on a thick tree. And let's just say he's rubbing a damn telephone pole and it's high. And what are you going to do next? Like, it's right by a food source, but it's, the painted side of it, we'll call it, the rubbed side of it, is facing the food source. So it looks like he's directionally going back somewhere in the timber, right?
Yeah.
Once you see that rub, are you just jotting a line directly like square away from that face, perpendicular to that face? Or are you going to look at your map first and say, all right, well, maybe he's going to go 15 degrees this way or that way because I think bedding's that way? Like, what's your process when you see that rub that you're like, all right, a big buck made this?
Well, back, even before I had a GPS, like I still got my green Garmin, 20 years ago, I didn't have any of that stuff. So you're going walkabout, and that's where like the postseason scouting comes in, because you can kind of, when the leaves are off, you can see where it gets thick versus open. And I would always kind of stay close to security cover, thick cover. And that's kind of where I would just travel on those routes, and I might go 3 weeks before I found another rub, and I might have been only 100 yards away from that first rub. But now, when the Garmin's came out, I got that. I would data log everything, my whole tracks, rub, and then put it on Basecamp, I think is what it was. I would, on the computer, do all that stuff. And then
I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now with all the mapping software on your phone, I feel sometimes people spend too much time looking at their phone instead of actually looking up, because they're like, he's going to this point, look at this point over here, and you're walking, because I'm guilty of it too. And sometimes you're taking yourself out of the moment. Like, if you find something good, lately I've been just like, okay, I'll pull the phone out, like, and I'll put it in my pocket, and I just want to take it all in. Like, okay, what's going on? What am I seeing here? What am I missing? Because, slowing it down sometimes, especially when it comes trying to decipher rubs, at least for me, I need to slow it down so I can make sense of it. Because I get excited when I see big rubs, because there's not many super wide deer in New Jersey where I'm hunting. So if I find a rub that's got chest high, I'm like, okay, this is serious right now. Like, it is early October, or it is like late, or even like postseason scouting. It's like, this rub is fantastic. So it's like, I want to take all that in and then pull out my compass. Yes, I still carry an old school compass, and get a directional reading. Okay. And then I'll pull out my phone, look at him, like, okay, he's going, say northeast, and I'm like, okay, what's northeast? Okay, I know from history, there's some bedding over there. So I'm going to start working my way in that direction, because I'm assuming he's going to be heading that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I like that you're continuing to pursue that, and maybe trying different approaches in between to make sure that you're, maybe if your initial thought's off in his direction, you're going to consider that, and you're not looking just at your map, but you're considering the woodsmanship you've built up over time. I think that's really important for people to.
And with tracks, you find fresh rubs in the fall. Look down. If it's sometimes there's leaves gone or whatever. Like, look for a track. You can get a gauge of a track. Or, okay, this is a banger track. And then you got this banger rub, and you're okay. Like, this is a 4-finger track and a rub like this thing. So now you can start putting them pieces together, because like, okay, this isn't a little deer, and not all rubs, just because it's on a big tree, doesn't mean it's a big deer. Like, I always see, like, social media is notorious for it. Everyone's like, look at this giant rub, and it's like 3 inches off the ground. It's rubbed hard on a big tree, and it's like, to me, I'm like, I'll go to and look at it, but it's like, if I'm not seeing trees behind it destroyed, tine marks, ticks marks, or up high, I kind of I mark them. Okay, maybe he's tight. He could be a giant deer, but he's tight, but it's like, I get more excited seeing the rubs that are really, chest high, or, they're 18 inches off the ground, all the bark's gone. Okay, to me, that's like a bigger deer,
So let's build upon that. Let's go to your ideal rub. If you were to pick if you were to describe the Mona Lisa of rubs, like what is your the rub that you see that you're like, this checks all the freaking boxes right here?
For me, like there's something about cedar or pine because it's so bright when they rub. You know, it's like you can see it from 150 yards away if you got a clearing. Like it's like you know the sunlight hits it just right. You know, it's like sunlight's coming down to the rub and it's glowing. And I go to
So
that
like,
rub.
but like what rub? I know cedar pine rubs, again, badass, sexy, love it, right? But what tells you that it's a mature buck? Like if the rub that's telltale that a mature buck made it, are you saying that like a cedar would point more to a mature buck? Or
I would say if I go to cedar because they're like but if I go there because cedars usually it's not there's other stuff. They got a lot of other branches going on. You know,
I got you. Okay.
you go to that rub and it is just tore up from you got main beam a long times just breaking things off ahead of it on top of it and all around it, or a tree behind it that's 10 inches behind the tree that's rubbing, and that thing is all beat up, you know, from time. That's what gets me going because like he's either got really long main beams or he's got really long tines. So whenever you get like a good solid rub with debris, other trees or bushes behind it and they're destroyed, there you go. Now we're getting into something. Now that's a deer that's like, okay, he has something that I'm after. You know, he either has really long main beams or he's got really long tines or maybe both.
Are
Is that
you?
did I
Yeah.
convey that good?
Yeah, absolutely. What are you looking for? And I'm just going to keep picking each individual detail of this example here. So, what are you looking for as far as depth of gouges? Are you looking for something that's just digging way the hell into that bark, or is that not super important to you?
It's I mean that digging hard in the bark, I think that's just testosterone. You know, he could just be,
Sure. Yeah.
and they will, but I'm looking for height. I'm looking for, you know, I would say that you have 10 inches, the tree is rubbed bare for 10 inches, and it's 18 inches off the ground. You got 8 to 10 inches. I'm looking for stuff that's 12 inches above the main rub, what people call a rub. I'm looking for damage up top or behind.
So you're
That's what
looking more at maximum height than you are average height.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
looking like damage that is away from the center of the rub.
Okay.
I'm trying to convey it for the listeners.
Yeah.
You say the rub is 18 inches off the ground, center of the rub's 18 inches. Now, if I got damage that's 28 inches, 30 inches high, that deer has something on its head that is phenomenal. That is like different. And then usually, I mean, especially this is in Iowa here, so it's like
Sure.
here where I'm hunting, there's not many deer. There's you're not going to have 4 deer that's pushing 160 giant, long main beams, long tines. We're going to have 1 or 2 at max.
Okay.
Probably 2 if I'm lucky. So if I start finding these rubs, it's like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And like I found 6 or 7 of them in this area. He's spending a lot of time in here, and they're all say heading, southeast. And then you start kind of going back and putting a plan together, because it might take you 6 or 7 trips to really start dialing it all in. Is that good?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to find an example so I can show people kind of what you're saying here. This is not maybe the best example. Here, 1 second, I'm gonna share screen really quick. Google, believe it or not, is not great at finding big buck rubs on cedars. But if you look at this rub, what Greg is talking about, so like right here is the minimum height.
Yeah.
That's the height off the ground. And then right here is the full length of the rub. And right here is the average, right in the center of the full length. Now, this is like the main portion, right? You can see this deer that's actually rubbing it right now. He's a little bit extended outside of his main power. So like where he's going to have the most power is when his neck is in line with his back or lower, which you can tell is right at what we're finding to be about the average height of the rub. Now, what you're seeing here with this, you're looking for something like this, like, okay, he's rubbing like that. Where's his beam coming out and contacting the tree and making that maximum height?
That is exactly. That's probably the perfect photo to use because you see, the main rub and you see what a mature taller deer is going to do with the tine marks, long beams and tines. what damage he can do above the main rub.
Yeah, and I think we're making a good point here. Notice what the buck is rubbing with. He's rubbing with his bases.
Yep.
Like you're going to see gnarlier rubs out of a buck with gnarly or knurled bases.
Yep.
You know, this average height where his main power is where the most distribution of that rub is going to be. But he's no stranger to even that tip of the mouse right there. That is the full height of this main section, plus that higher than where the top of the rub is conventionally, how people think of it.
And sometimes the damage up high, it's not even really damage. It's a small tick, like a piece of bark.
Yeah.
Right. Like he stabbed it.
Like you ran a knife down the tree or something.
Yep.
Or a nail.
See the big, and you sometimes you got to look really close for the damage. It's not going to be like, oh my God, look, he's destroying all this. But now
so this is another picture of like he was rubbing this or this, and he did extra damage here.
Yep. And that's the say if you're rubbing on that one there, he's got a lot of stuff happening. So okay, that there's a lot going on with that rub. And that one, the small tree is going to move when he's rubbing. Yeah. And like the cedar, like go back to the original rub we just did.
So like this for once, you're not seeing the rub on the other tree.
Yeah.
So like that, I wouldn't think that that's nearly as special. I'll go. Do you want to go back to this one right here?
Yeah, go back to the first one.
Okay.
Because we talked about the cedars and like the destruction on the rub. So
let me see if I could find it.
Yeah.
Now I don't know where it went. Look at me with
Go
technology here. Oh, here it is.
Yeah. So now if this was a cedar, you have all these little branches coming off on the cedar, or especially cedars, going all the way up. Anybody's hunted cedar, you got to trim a lot to get in a cedar tree. So if you go to a cedar and there's no little limbs sticking up 4 feet chest high, you're going to be in the same type of scenario. Like that buck broke all that stuff off. So okay, this deer has something. He has either one super long main beam, or he's got really long tines, or like this year, the combination of both.
Mm-hmm. And I'll point out that bucks are, deer, any animal in general, they're freaking powerful. Like they're out there living and fighting for every freaking breath. Like they're strong animals. So like a weak deer is probably a crap ton stronger than a strong human. Typically, if you're talking average, like a 2-year-old deer can do some impressive crap. So, I mean, I feel like that a 2-year-old deer can put a lot of damage.
Yeah.
A young deer can put a lot of damage on a tree, especially given time and effort and testosterone.
And look at the one right next to that same.
Wait 1 second.
It's a bigger deer rubbing a small sapling. He's got it pushed over a little bit, like I think sometimes,
right here,
you see like a small sapling. Yeah, the one right to the left of it there. Like
it doesn't mean that it's not a big buck.
Yep. Look how low he's going. Like you see some of these, rubs that are down to the ground. Sometimes it could be a big deer. He's just slightly rubbing into it. Maybe he's got a scratch or itch. He's just leaving a scent. Sometimes, like not every rub is going to be. He's not going to give maximum effort on every rub.
Like this one.
Lord.
Yes, please.
Yes. And look at that rub. You look at that. That looks tiny.
Yeah.
But look at that deer.
It's tiny and low.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I think it's important for us to mention that, like, we are going by the general rule here, right? We're going by the whitetail hunting in general. It's just a series of trying to increase your odds.
Yeah.
And we're operating under the principle of this is what you'll see. And in these situations, you're more likely to encounter a big buck. And, everyone can point to the anomaly and be like, well, I saw this buck one time rub this tiny tree and it was super low and it was a 700-inch buck. Yeah. And it's like, guess what? That's not the average. So like if we're going to advise people to do something, we're not going to keep your mind open, right? Which goes along with every freaking podcast. Keep your mind open, figure out what's really going on for yourself. But the general rule from what you're describing, Greg, multiple knocked off limbs, average height being as high as possible. It's not centrally focused on the ground. Lots of trash means the rub is going to be trashed up in many different ways. You're looking for really high tine marks, those stabbing marks from bigger beams or a higher height buck. You're looking for Now I want to touch on this next, but touched on tracks a little bit. I'm a big proponent of logging tracks and associating a specific track to a specific buck. If you can identify that that buck made this rub, or a buck of a certain class made this rub, and his track, his right front foot's a little wonky or whatever, like he's exceptionally wide or exceptionally long and narrow or something like that. Like now every time I see that track, it's like a trail camera picture of that deer showing up. So like, how do you ever back off of that rub and then start to actually track that deer to actually help you continue that rub line at all?
It's hard sometimes.
It's hard with leaves and marsh and all that.
And we don't like, we don't get much snow here in New Jersey. It's like, guys that up north or the Midwest, like you could track a buck track in the, come late season, you can get a good idea of what he's doing. Like Johnny's, notorious tracking, buck tracks. He can get a gauge on what a certain particular buck's going to do because he can follow that track for a long distance. Like for me, every time it snows, like I try and get out in the woods. Like last year, it snowed in January. We got a freak snowstorm, like 6 inches. I was out in the woods for 2 days after work. Like I left work early 2 days in a row, and I was out in the woods because we don't get that very often. And I was in like in the Pine Barrens. So they're kind of wandering anyway, and I'm like, dude, I just got more confused trying to follow these buck tracks around because they were literally just like, oh man, he's going to go back to his bedding, and there's some bedding back in there. He was over here, over there. Like it was like the worst thing because it's like it just totally confused me on what that
shot the theories down.
Yeah. But like you got to rub near a scrape. Sometimes you might be able to catch a track, or a rub near like a field edge, somewhere you're going to get some solid dirt. Yeah, I can gauge a track, but in the big woods, man, a lot of leaves, it's like, especially in the pines, anybody's hunting pines, there's just, they're just punching holes in those pines. It can be really challenging to get a true track size.
Yeah, that's frustrating. I don't have those problems. I don't get many pines.
Well,
I can imagine blanketed in pine needles.
Yeah, it's I was hunting last year in the pines. I hit that buck high in the, above the spine. He came in, he was a funky pine buck, just crazy, like ugly looking rack, but like he came in like it was like silence. Like I just got like movement, and it was like it just happened so quick. I didn't even get a chance to pull up my rangefinder. It was like, and it was like I had a small little window, and it was like I just 7 yards too hot on him. I was like, oh, it is what it is.
Have you ever had an instance where you have been able to pin down a deer due to his antler color because he's rubbing a certain tree and it's a certain coloration or anything like that? Where it's tipped you off?
I'll get that more I've seen it in the mountains more than like in the marsh.
Okay.
Yeah, marsh because of the cattails. Most of they're polished up pretty good.
Okay.
Guys that spend a lot, Jacob, like marsh deer usually have well polished antlers. Most at least, yeah. And the pines, most of them are dark. The anomaly like I find in the pines, which helps me like track a deer, is like if a deer gets kicked out, and he ends up relocating into the pines, and let's just say he's genetically has white horns. Well, he's like a unicorn out in those woods because most deer, they have a dark rack, and then you see this one with the white rack. You're like, okay, well, he's not a true piney deer. He's from like down the road somewhere. He ended up relocating to the pines.
Especially them tamaracks, they just stain the hell out of the antlers sometimes if they're feeding on areas like that too. I would say the feed I've seen like with the deer, like with 1 second, like when I was hunting by Jake last year, like with chestnut oaks, when these deer feed on these chestnuts, they get super stained racks. And this is not a cattail deer, super gnarly kind of bases and stuff. Well, the cattail deer, like the opposite. And then if you get a deer that spends a lot of time in the tamaracks, they're dark stained.
Really?
Like you see the North Lake Tamarack lakes are like dark stained lakes, and they're clear, but they're just dark, and that's kind of what it seems like just from what I've seen.
Like this deer right here, he's a marsh deer, and he's smooth. all the way from base to tip.
Yeah, he is polished.
Yeah, and
I can tell.
this guy back here is a Big Woods. You know, he's got stuff all over. He's dark, but he's just polished from the tips. It's like it's a weird sometimes mix, you know. But it probably, like I said, genetics mixed with food and the environment. You know,
That's really cool.
That's a really cool, correlation there. That's a good question, Chris. I really like that.
I have one.
I'm starting to turn my gears over in my head. Chris, you know the one I'm after. And I know where he's living, and it's being more solidified as we talk about this. But man, so is there, what I've seen in the marshes around me is I'm not going to reveal it, but there's like a common style of brush that is conducive to when it's rubbed. And I see that rub, no matter when I see it, I'm like, that's an early season rub. Like, I'm very confident that rub was made in the early season. Is there any kind of brush that you encounter that you're like, that's rut, that's early, that's late, like something like that?
When I see the brush that, you know, is just destroyed, like it just looks like those was like a wrestling match on this tree, where it's just, you know, it's thumb-sized branches, you know, trees
weaved in and torn up.
They're just snapped in half and it's you know, you can't break it if you try. It's so flexible, and you know, I call them whips. Like, I don't know what they are, you know, but there's a few that I don't want to try to give away too much information. I'll just call them whips. You know, there's a few bushes it's hard to break. You know, even if you cut them, like, it just doesn't really break. And I see them and they're just destroyed. For me, that is a deer with long main beams and tines, that he's got that thing wrapped up in there, and he's got the physical capability to snap those things in half. Young bucks are just going to whip that thing around. They're not going to break it, but it's going to take a deer of significant stature, you know, body wise plus rack wise, to get that stuff tangled in there and just be able to rip it like that.
I'm going to see if, Chris,
of those.
Yeah. Like, that's one thing, like, or random sapling, you just see you're walking out and you're like, man, that sapling's like 2 inches in diameter, and it's just snapped at like knee high or waist high. You're like, oh wow, okay, that's interesting.
I found multiple that were like maybe an inch, a little over an inch, and they're just like, there's a cluster of them, and they're laying on the ground, and it looks like the freaking gardener came through and just trimmed the stuff. And I'm looking around, and then there's others that are just twisted and mangled, and I'm like, what in the hell did this? Like, is this just like a really tight rack deer that has the leverage? Or like you said, you know, does he just have those beams and tines, you know, out there on the ends and stuff that, you know, he just gets them wrapped up, or what? Like, it's violent.
I call them rage rubs. That's full testosterone.
Do you find that you see those? So Josh turned me on to these, and we find a lot of them in the CRP stuff that we target, and we find a lot of them in the early season. Do you find the same, or?
I find it with sometimes maples in the one spot I hunt. Like, I don't even know, it might be gums, you know, or maples, but I find saplings like mangled up, and usually that's when they separate and they go hard horned, you know, and that one kind of goes out, or you get two that they're spending a little too much time together, you know, and you get in that mid-September or maybe early September, and it's like, I hate you. No, I hate you. Go over there and they'll start destroying stuff.
I'm just going to beat the shit out of this tree. So it's not you, buddy.
Yeah.
Man.
You know, and in the early season, I find, like, most of my rubs, I don't find really big hammer rubs until, you know, we get that mid-October. You know, I'll say the second week of October is when I start to see bigger rubs, because these bucks, like, that testosterone is just slowly starting to ramp up. You know, like that first, here in Jersey, like that first week of October, I get a lot of scrape activity. Bucks are really starting to get riled up. You know, some bucks are swollen up a little bit. You can see it in their face, you know, and then I start getting the big rubs like right after that. You know, usually they're finding their spots where those are. It's like, okay, this is my travel route. And sometimes, you know, it's very food dependent. Like last year, hey, these oaks over here were popping off. Well, the rub line was way over there. Now this year, the oaks are over here. So that rub line shifts because it's pretty much following where the does are going to be, where the food's going to be.
I have kind of an interesting. I just thought of this on the blue. I was trying to come up with a video I had last year. I must have deleted it, but basically I watched a buck stand up in his bed and do exactly what you're saying, where you rub the crap out of some willow. But I have another video of some rubbing that I want to see if we can just break down what do you think this buck,
And
that
that's the
little
tree,
buck,
by the way, that I'm finding in that CRP a lot is willows that are just freaking snapped.
yeah, willow, and then I think this is actually mixed into CRP right here, but these young poplar groves, like, okay, so like here's the situation here. So this poplar grove I'm set up on, this is a couple years ago. I didn't really know much of what I was doing yet. This is
That's a
6
giant
years
buck.
ago. Yeah, right. So like you're in a poplar grove like this, right? All on the edge is sumac, not poison sumac, just regular sumac in a CRP thicket. And you come up to this poplar grove, right? And every dang tree has got rubs on it, historical, this season, last season. What are you thinking when you come to the scenario where there's just a ton of rubs like this? And I'm going to relate this to what I discovered about this spot.
I would say if I'm seeing a lot of rubs concentrated in say a 15 or 30 yard or even a 50-yard area, that's where they're coming and going into that bedding. Either they were bedding there when they went hard horned, or that's doe bedding, and these bucks are coming and going and leaving you're having a lot of bucks visit that spot. And
Yep.
usually I find that, and it's a lot of rubs, but no major big rubs. It's like a lot of young bucks.
Yeah, and occasionally there'd be a good rub mixed in this particular patch and some other ones on this property, but it was just a highly buck dense area. So yes, I mean that's what's going on here. This is what I thought at the time was buck bedding, right? I thought like, oh, there's a buck in here just tearing up the area. You hear this all the time, and it just makes me laugh. But like people are like, oh, there's a bunch of rubs in there, and I found his lair, I found his home. There's just freaking pouring up trees and rubs all over, and like this big buck is just hanging out in here. And that's what I thought was going on, because that's what I heard 100 times, but that's really not what was happening. What's really happening is in this CRP down here, downhill, and in this thick on the opposite ends, there would be does bedded in here. And I always kick a buck out of, or a deer out of here when I come in the morning, and come to find out it was actually the does I was kicking out.
Yeah.
And so the young bucks in particular were the ones coming by in daylight and just rubbing the heck out of this. And I could never put a camera on here to find out, but I found it out over a slew of sits.
Yeah. And I find when you find spots like this, like a mature buck, usually his rubs, he's rubbing for a purpose. It's a direction. It's a travel route. I'm gonna run this way. He's not gonna, when I do find like the same rubs, kind of different directions, I think I'm getting close to a bedding. It's big rubs, same type of rubs, and let's say it's heading in 3 different directions. I personally think he's bedding close, because he might be, 50 yards this way, 50 yards that way, but that's usually where his entry and exit to his bedding area could be.
So, and you're getting into the next points too that I want to make about this area. We're going to watch this video, and bear with me. This is the beginning of my self-filming career, and it's 1080p, so bear with me. But you were just saying big bucks rub with a purpose, right? And it's a little more directional and probably on one side of the tree, typically, than a young buck would. So if you see this buck rub a tree, what do you depict him doing? Like, what do you think he's going to do? What do you think that rub ends up looking like after he's done with it?
Nothing crazy. He's going to be more forehead rubbing than actually antler rubbing. He doesn't have any brows, a little fork and horn. He's just going to be depositing a lot of scent, and and maybe the small sapling, he's going to push it over a little bit. There's going to be some wiggle room. So maybe if he does rub, it might be longer, taller than what his rack would you?
Because it's a thin tree.
Yeah.
So you're using, and this is a good point to our viewers, so you're using the tree as a gauge of like, all right, how tall is this buck truthfully rubbing? Because of the
because it's kind of hard with the small especially a tree that's moving, it's kind of hard to get a good gauge on how tall that buck could be, because he could just be leaning into it, you know, and he's rubbing, you know, 2 feet. We don't know, you know, unless you see it, you know.
Exactly. So this buck comes into this tree, and he's actually over marking an old historical rub. And so he's taken a break to smell it, and he is taking a lot of time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But you see how, I mean, exactly what you're saying. He's forehead rubbing all day, trying to use his base to make any damage he can. And he does this for a really long time. Here's him pushing on it, right?
Yep.
So he's going to bend this tree over a little bit. And he's even making it, so see how his head's up? He's
Yep.
even making markings that are a little bit higher than would be normal of him.
Yep.
But you can see those beams aren't wrapping around and can't make a higher tick mark. They can't hit much branches behind him and do any damage. I thought something that I took away from this, and I've thought it for a long time, it's really interesting to me, is that he is constantly coming back and licking that rub.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he is, what that is they have what's called a Jacob's gland. And they have a gland that they can deposit scent on the roof of their mouth, essentially right below their nose. And it's like pasting that scent into their noses is what that does. And so that's, dogs can't smell when they're panting. Well, a deer can almost have an amplified scent. When you see them do that lip curl and you see them pant and open their mouth, they are ingesting as much scent and as much information as they can possibly get.
Yeah, and he's
even when they're breathing like that. So now this rub,
he's pushing good, and you can see how, you know, they rub the forehead, but also like they rub their eye a lot too, like these young bucks, like they really put the side of their face in there, so they're depositing that eye scent, forehead scent. There's a lot preorbital going in there, like there's a lot happening there. Like now he's rubbing all the way down, so someone walking by is going to see this rub, like, oh man, that could be a big deer, you know, because it might be tall or it's down low, but you look at that deer, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that deer from it shoots somebody, you know.
Look at, he's even got that sap and sinew on his ears, like and it's cool because he has to wrap around so hard. Chris, this is your point too. What color is antlers with what he's rubbing too? You can see all that sinew deposited on the bases of those antlers too. But because he needs to wrap around to get any point of contact with any knurled bit of his antler, he's making that rub on 360 of that tree, which you're seeing here. And look at, he's doing that lick in the nose like crazy. You know, he's looking for something right now. That's why his ears were pointed in one direction. He doesn't see any danger. And he's going to go back to the rub. And so, he's just putting on some kind of display and trying to do what he can. But in this 7 minutes he's been rubbing so far, he hasn't done nearly the damage of what another buck might in 1 minute. And I think it's a good point to say that, like, this buck is making a rub much less strategically than we would expect a really big buck to be making, a rub. While he's really giving her hell, he's wrapping all the way around that tree. He's in an area just to mark that he has some kind of presence there. He's over marking another deer's rub. He's constantly licking it to try and gauge what it was underneath that scent, like what other bucks have been around, to gauge if his scent's being deposited well. And he's just kind of taking part in a survey here. He's not really like being territorial. He's not being directional. He's not planning on bedding here. He actually moves right back out of this area. He's right here at this point. And he moves just straight back out now into the doe bedding. And so a lot of times when I see rubs like this, and Greg, feel free to tell me if you do or don't see this as well, but it's often in these little thick groves are on the edge of something that's even thicker. And what they're doing, I feel like, in my opinion, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like they know a doe in heat has been in there or going to be in there. And I think they're blazing up what they can without either pushing that doe out or breaking up that area, and trying to lay some kind of claim to what's going on that outside. And potentially, in that case, and what a lot of these cases are, is rubs of varying height, a bunch of different aggressive rubs where you're going to see like a bunch of torn up rubs, but they're all just high, low, whatever, and they're not directional. They're not with a purpose, but they are just some kind of stake of territory.
And I think too, with, I've watched more young bucks breed does in person than big bucks. So it's like that little guy's, he's staking a claim. He's putting the scent all over all in that place. And if a doe is in the heat and he's the first one that gets there, or she's used to that scent, like him being there all the time, like she's probably going to give it up to that buck because he's there making a presence. He's putting in the work, I guess, to breed, because she wants to get bred. She doesn't necessarily care about who, so it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there, he's going to break that rub off, and that doe's right there. She's hearing all that noise. She might be like, okay, let me get up and investigate, go towards that rub sound. And I've seen that time and time. Spikes, 4-pointers, little basket racks. I've probably watched like a dozen deer breed, but I've never watched a mature deer breed because they're usually off, in a hole. They take that doe somewhere else where they're safe.
Yeah.
But the deer, younger does, or even just a doe wants to get bred, so she could be done with it, maybe, because as soon as she gets in the heat, and if I can get bred by anybody, like, they're not going to bother me. I'm not going to get for the next week and a half. Like, she's going to give it up to the first buck that comes along.
It almost seems like the younger ones are like Minutemen, so to speak. They don't stick around, and then you watch those mature ones, they'll bang a doe for 48 hours.
Yep.
They don't. It's
Yeah.
the old bull, young bull.
Yep.
And I think it's like the young does associate with the young bucks more too, because like that young doe just doesn't want to be disturbed. Like, she didn't know what she's doing as much. She's in more danger to move around and get pushed.
Yeah.
But I feel like a mature doe has, and every species does this. It's funny because this is actually the reason guys like big boobs and butts is because it's a sign of what is sustainable to carry over our genetics.
Fertility.
Like, yes, it's a sign of fertility. And in women, it's a sign that a big, strong man is the one that will be able to take care of their kids and them. So like, as a doe that's more mature, you might understand that you want a buck to be able to pass down your genes and take care and like be a strong sire to your young, right? But as a buck, you're probably going to wish you had the mature doe that's had the genetics that have passed down for years, that's always yielding the right way. So that's why I feel like you see particular bucks associate with particular bedding areas at very specific times a year.
Yeah.
Is because he knows that doe's about to pop.
Yeah. Agreed.
Even further with that too, do you think that this aggressive sign, like you see a solo torn up rub, do you think that it's associated more, well, sorry, not solo torn up. Let's say you just see a mess of rubs, right? Do you think that aggression is more dominance, or do you think it's more trying to establish dominance as a testosterone driven younger buck?
Or frustration.
Yeah.
Frustration. Yeah, that's a good point.
I guess it depends on the mood, because if you're up, let's say you're the big buck and you were out making your rounds and you come back to this doe bedding area and that doe's been already bred, he knows, like, he might leave that bedding area angry that he missed the party. So now he's going to go to the nearest tree or bush or whatever and just take all that anger and frustration out on that tree, or it could be, I just got my ass handed to me by, a bully buck, and I'm like, now I'm angry because he's got the ladies. Now I got to go over here and fight for, find something else. So I'm going to go just massacre 5 rubs in a row, until I find the next doe or to the next doe bedding area. I think it's like, it depends. There's a lot that comes into play, like, especially when it comes to like the rut, you don't know why they're doing it. It could be, they're angry, they're frustrated, testosterone's getting the best of them. And now, like I said, early season rubs, yeah, they're going bedding the food, they're hard horn, they're just getting their travel routes, and then that second rut, security cover type rubs after gun season, they're usually relocating, and those rubs are like the safe zone, like they're kind of claiming that little thick spot for themselves.
Yeah. I am just relating so much to what you're saying right now. It's just getting me fired up about the stuff I've seen, and it's playing right into what I've had work for me too. Can you describe a scenario? So we kind of describe what it looks like when young bucks all come in outside of doe bedding, right? We've literally shown a video of what it looks like at this point. Can you describe a scenario that you would picture? We kind of done a mature buck already. What do you think it would look like if you're following a trail that a bunch of young bucks had just went across racing after a hot doe and covering a lot of ground?
What
Like,
rub?
how do you think, like, what's the aggression look like in your mind? That I'm trying to get it so that when viewers see this in person, like see rubs of this manner, they can be like, all right, this is what's going on, rather than like, man, I don't know if this is a rub line to bedding or if this is a rub line because these bucks are chasing this doe and they're just blazing up whatever's in sight. Like, kind of describe, if you can differentiate, or if you have a better example in your mind, kind of describe like, all right, when I see this, I know what's going on and this is what's really going on.
Like, so when I see, like I said, we touched on earlier, when the rubs are all in different directions, usually that's, you look at, okay, I'm going to associate that either with, a buck bed, or some type of doe bedding, now, if you're getting like you're traveling 100 yards, you're walking on a flat and there's those rubs heading in a particular pattern, like say upper ridge or something. People that hunt the mountains like upper ridge, usually those rubs are going back to bedding, long spaced out rubs, probably more of a travel corridor. But if you're getting like cluster rubs, it's either doe bedding or buck bedding, I would think. Is that kind of
Yeah.
question?
No, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's spot on.
Because cluster rubs, like you hunt the marsh a lot, so sometimes with a buck will bed, there'll be a lot of rubs kind of coming in different directions out of that bed. Sometimes there won't be, but sometimes there will be, or they're in the marshes and they come in the mainland. Boom, there's their rub, coming, from the marsh or swamp.
Right. Yeah. And I often
there.
I make that a part of my strategy too, is that like if you got 20 options of bedding to check, right? I know where all those trails hit mainland, right? And they're all gonna, the food source isn't where you're gonna kill them, but it's the commonality, right? That oak island, that oak flat, whatever. Maybe just going to mainland, right? But like on this line, let's see if we can just draw it out really quick, right? So I've got beds that are like hundreds of yards apart right here, but they all lead to points that are 10 yards apart on this island.
Yep.
I'd rather scout this island and look for what sign is reaching that island than spend half my day each time checking each one of those individual beds. And that
you're scouting postseason, because you can speed up the process. You don't have a lot of time, or in-season scouting. That is a pretty good in-season. I can hunt this evening. You walk that edge 400, 300 yards, and where all those trails come in. Like, okay, this is dead. Well, this one's dead, and you kind of you hunt the freshest sign that's there.
And yeah, that's something that has helped me a lot. Is and actually what debuted yesterday was the video of my seminar, and I touched on this in my seminar, but something that can help you drastically with targeting, especially specific bucks, and when they're nomadic in situations of high pressure, and shifting beds continuously, otherwise people kill them, because they're doing something habitual. Something I found that's really helpful is when you pick a spot that you should see sign if a buck is in that bedding area.
Yep.
So to your point, Greg, this might be that cedar that's going to get touched up. Like that cedar is going to get touched up, or that branch is going to get ripped off, or that willow along the way is going to get messed with. Like, or there's a distinct scrape with a track. Like, I'm going to see sign here if that buck's in there. Now I don't need to go to each individual bed and bust out the buck, or hunt it and hope I don't bust out the buck and wait until the end of the day and then move on to the next day and hope he's still in the area. Now I can go to my touch points of this is where sign should be. It's not there. This is where sign should be. It's not there. This is where sign should be. It's there. I'm going here. Yeah. And that can be the difference.
And talk about that a little more. Like when you're hunting, sometimes getting access to the beds is almost impossible, or getting close, because it could be a private line, it could be water, it could be like impassable water. So sometimes you need to hunt where the deer are going to be coming to in your hunting hours. Okay, I know they're bedding in the islands, but I can't get to the islands because it's private. I can only hunt this, or it's like a federal land, like you can't hunt that, but you can hunt everywhere else but that. So you kind of work those edges. I know they're in there, they're going to come out, and you just work those edges and you hunt where the deer are going to be at that last gray light hour.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another point is, instead of hunting those or scouting those beds necessarily in marshes, it's often like, all right, I got one treated. that I could sit at anyways, right? There's one tree that's cutting him off between there and the food source. It might be 60 yards from his bed, and he still might not make it there in daylight in the early season, right? So it's like, whether I see that bed or not, the setup's going to be the same. The wind direction is going to have to be the same. You know, like that. I'm so restricted on how I can kill this deer that I just need to know if he's going to be in there or not. And it doesn't take hitting that bed oftentimes to find that out.
And the same token with like clear cuts, like you showed that buck, you know, that CRP field, all those rubs were concentrated in one area.
And that was a really old clear cut. Was what that was too. Yeah.
The CRP field or clear cut could be hundreds of acres. Well, there's only like 90% of that is useless. So you need to walk the perimeter of that and find out where you start finding some buck sign. Then you're like, okay, why is that buck sign here? You got rubs and scrapes going in and out of this clear cut directional. Okay, this is where he's going in that clear cut. Is it a low point? You know, is it the cover? Like, what advantage does that buck have coming into this spot? So you can kind of eliminate, you know, instead of busting through, like even with the marsh, instead of busting out in the marsh, you know, if you don't have the time or, you know, tide or whatever it might be, you can kind of simplify your scouting, you know, to, I want to just walk the perimeter. You do it field edges, clear cuts, you know, mountain laurel. There's always going to be some type of buck sign coming out somewhere, and that's what you need to find. And usually I find it's rubs, which leads to scrapes, or vice versa. Scrapes will lead to rubs and some thick bedding cover or security cover. There's always some type of buck sign. And usually if it's used on a regular basis, there's always going to be some type of rubs there.
It's getting to the nerdy stuff. I love it.
What's that?
It's just so simplified. Like, you have a bed, you have scrapes and rubs and food sources and all that, and then you basically have what maybe he wants to get to does, maybe he wants to get to a food source, which those generally correlate.
Yep.
And so now you basically have a line with a bunch of points on it, and now you're just trying to push in as close as you can, whether that be, you know, cover wise or, you know, the legality like you were talking about. Maybe you can't get as close as you want to his bed, but
even the access, like you might have to blow out half the wood to get to like a bed. Well, you're just screwing yourself up because all the deer are running around. You're leaving too much ground.
You're 1,000% right.
Yeah.
I had this conversation today with a buddy, Michael Pike. I was telling him, I was like, man, hill country is really nice because the deer density is low, but you still get giants, but you're not going to run in there and blow 30 deer out all over the place on your hike in. Like, you might see a deer, and generally if you see a deer, it is the deer.
So, and even like you know, hill country, you can usually kind of dictate okay, they're bedding on this point that you can see a well-used buck bed. But say in the pines where I'm hunting, they're just bedding in a general area. Usually you put that general area, like a patch of mountain laurel, you know, they'll be bedding right in that mountain laurel, just on the inside of that cover. But there's usually, if you walk around that laurel where the pines is, there's going to be a few spots where it's a scrape. There's some type of buck sign. And usually that's where it's like, okay, this is where I need to be because I can't cover 150 yards. It's too thick. I'm a single person. So it's like, where's this buck sign at? I'm not going to bull my way, you know, bull rush into the middle of this mountain laurel to hunt a scrape because I'm leaving so much ground set, making so much noise. So you got to kind of hunt the fringes. And, you know, sometimes you're playing a long game at that point. Okay. You know, it's like hunting the beds in the marsh. Like I got 3 days. I'm going to hunt this way with the wind's doing this. So you kind of like work your way in and bounce around a little bit. So you find, okay, this is where it's going to happen. Same with, you know, cuts, mountain laurels, pines, you know, and you might go like in the pines, I might go 5 days without seeing a deer. So it's like, it's very like, and he's here. It's like, I'm just 3 days too early or 3 days too late, you know?
Yep.
So how do you think a deer's personality plays into his frequency of rubs? Do you think some deer are predispositioned to not rub much? Do you think some are more likely to rub a bunch? Do you think it's a factor of personality for some deer?
I think they're just like us. Some deer are more aggressive, naturally aggressive. I mean, you see it. I mean, Midwest whitetail back in the day, there's, you know, Bill Winke and the bully bucks. Like you got 100, he's hunting 160, 170 deer, and you got this 120-inch deer just chasing him off. He's just more amplified. He's has the dominant gene physically, and mentally. But the big, guy with 170-inch antlers, he's kind of a wuss. He's kind of pushover. He's just was blessed with good genetics, antler wise, But sometimes antler wise, in my opinion, might not be the best genetics to pass on. He's got great antlers, but maybe he's weak physically, So it's like, if you're a doe, you're going to fight for me. I'm going to take the winner. And just because the deer's got giant antlers doesn't mean he's the dominant buck.
I've heard more than one person talk about the long tine deer, the real tall tine deer, are predispositioned to shy away from fighting because they break easier.
It's possible.
So, I mean, I think what you're saying has a lot of merit.
Yeah, and like I said, and I always hear like call bucks. Like you growing up in Texas,
The call bucks.
It's like I don't understand that, because just because someone doesn't have giant racks doesn't mean he's not genetically superior physical wise. Like he can handle disease, he can handle drought, he can handle hardships. Like he's just built differently. Like just like us humans. Like not every Viking, is going to breed with a certain female, because he might not live long, because guy that's 5'1" might have better genetics for longevity of the herd, so to speak.
Yeah,
I think deer, like because we can see it with deer. It's moose, elk. Like there is a hierarchy, and usually it's antler based, but not always. Rams. Like you see these rams going at it, or bears. Like you see a bear he gets dwarfed by other bears, but he's just whooping ass the whole time. Grizzlies, when they fight, because it's like this grizzly's half the size and he's kicking ass because he's just that bear,
Built different.
How many people screw with the Wolverine?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a wrestler.
Grouchy bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jake, you're a wrestler. You've wrestled some guys that are half your size, and you're like, this dude's just strong. He's just built different. Like, how are you so strong? Like, I don't know. And there's guys that are twice your size, and you're like, dude, he's so weak. He just doesn't have it,
Yeah.
I think deer the same way.
100%, man. So there's a term. So I want to echo your point too, that like the biggest bucks I've ever been on, like almost always make little to no sign.
Agree.
It's so odd. Like as far as rubs, like sometimes it's the nature of where they live, and sometimes it's just their personality. But really, really interesting stuff. I have a picture of a rub that big typical 12, the 6x6 made last year. And if you looked at that thing with anything other than confirmation that deer was already there, or a microscope, you would have no idea that a deer rubbed it. And if you did see the marks, they'd be 6 inches off the ground. Yeah. But like that's just the way he was. And I would get excited about rubs that I saw that were tiny and on tiny trees, because I knew it was likely him. Yeah. Where I saw their deer doing crazy stuff. So keep your mind open, but it does appear that a personality plays a big role in the nature of what sign a particular buck leads.
Like I ran cameras, like I said, white flash back in the day, and then when the first black flashes came around, the first like red flash, with the video mode, and I would have like so many signposts where I'd be like, oh man, this like it was tore up. And it was just like that video we were watching. It was a small buck who literally just went up and down the signpost row.
Every day.
Yep. And I would see those come to it. Everything would flock to it. But I would always see the big deer in the back. He would never hit it. He knew where it was. He walked by it, but he never rubbed it. He didn't need to. He knew it was there. Yeah, signpost rub. Like he knows what's happening. He's there to catch a track of a doe, because every time a 1 or 2 year old buck hit it, does, like I said, within 8 hours, we're smelling that signpost rub. So it was like, and then he would show up literally a few hours after the doe. Like it's like they knew. It was like almost like a stopwatch. This one rub was like a stopwatch. A buck would hit it within 8 hours. Does are smelling it, and then within a few hours later, there was a big buck just cruising by. He never smelled the rub. He just was in that vicinity.
Dude, that's so telling. I mean, look at, so you weren't there. So the Michigan show. Look at 40-year-old me and 18-year-old Jacob. Jacob's out there wanting to wrestle me over and over again. And I'm like, hey,
18.
I just want to eat jambalaya and play cornhole. Leave me the fuck alone. Like, I don't want to fight or wrestle or use any other extra energy. I just want to hang out. And I can imagine, those bucks, they're the same way. They just want to be left alone. And at the end of the day, I feel like those bigger deer get big because all they do all day long is take in information.
Survive. Yep.
They literally are constantly analyzing everything, and they learn how to use that nose.
Yep.
And that's why you look at all these guys that are scrape guys. How many dudes that are killing deer off scrapes versus 50 to 75 yards downwind of that scrape?
And what, to touch on that a little bit, I used to run my cameras, like down low, then I went up high, because they were getting stolen. But now I've kind of converted to running my cameras back down low, blackouts only, and cable locking it. And I'm picking up so much more on video mode of a buck just randomly coming by a scrape or a rub, and he comes nowhere near it. Like you said earlier, he knows what he's doing, and he's been around the block a few times. This isn't like when they do all the studies, it's like in the Midwest or like some of the Penn State studies. Like, I don't know if that's truly accurate across the board, because like I've been hunting a long time and I don't get the same information that these collared deer are doing. I've seen a lot of stuff. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it was like, oh, these bucks do this. I've seen them do the exact opposite more times than what this data is telling me. And like, well, that's just that particular buck. They're all kind of uniquely different, and here in Jersey, you can kill 5 bucks. Well, when they're 2-year-old, they're a different monster. Even does. Like, I mean, I got a doe, this skull that's right here. She was 8 years old. I got her, age. She was 8 years old when I killed her. I shot her. I hunted her for 2 or 3 years. There was an old wooden stand. Every time she went by this wooden stand, she would shake her leaves at it with her fawns, her young ones. So they would look up and they know. So she's been around the block teaching does and button bucks to look at an old wooden tree stand that is like falling down. But she was it's like, she remembered a human in that tree. So she was teaching how many bucks does she teach that to?
Right.
So I was like, that's not normal. That's not normal behavior.
Yeah.
Like, that's just strange. And I've had, a few years ago, I was hunting the marsh, salt marsh. I had this 2 bucks come in, and I didn't have a buck tag, whatever. That's just the way New Jersey goes. So they leave. Well, the big buck catches my ground scent, and I'm sitting up in the tree. I was actually in a saddle, an old diaper saddle. I looked down, and here was that 7-pointer. I'm like, God, he's right below me. So I'm looking around for the big buck. Where's the big buck at? He's over in the dark, looking up in the trees. He had that 7-pointer come, and he followed my scent all the way to my tree. And that big buck was back there because I beat him. He knows I beat him. So he sent the 7-pointer to die, basically. And then him and I made eye contact, and he literally just backed up into the dark and never seen again. Never seen him all season long. Like, he got, and he knew it. So he sent his little crony out there to figure out what I was. And I'm like, dude, this is insane. Like, how are you supposed to kill that deer? Like, how is that deer going to die by a human? It's almost impossible.
Jeez. That's nuts.
Yeah. Like, I was looking at this deer because I'm moving. I'm like, where's that big buck at? He's 89 yards away. And he was literally just scanning trees like this. And then I look at him, he looks at me, and then he literally just got confirmation what it was. And he just went right backtracked, stayed eyes, and just went right back.
It's like a velociraptor learning to open doors.
Uh-huh.
Jeez.
Yeah.
What are you looking up, Jacob?
What?
What are you looking up over there?
Yeah.
I'm asking Greg a question, and then I'm showing an example of it. Greg, you've talked about this a little bit, and I actually learned this concept from you, but talk a little bit about tick marks. You've mentioned it a couple times. What are they, and how do you use them?
In a rub context, or just tick marks randomly? Tick
marks, both.
Okay. So from a rub standpoint, it's like a length of time things, damage to a tree, a rub high or behind. But then anybody who's hunting the swamps knows when a big buck's coming through swamp, stuff's on his antlers, he's kicking back and forth. You can hear it. It's a unique sound. Like once you hear it, like you know that sound. Sounds like a hollow baseball bat almost, like hitting trees. And I find them in the swamp a lot that are coming through, and you see just on a trail, a big wide buck or whatever, and there's just a random tick mark on trees, a certain height. And then you're like, what is this? Because he's just coming through cattails or brush or briars, and he has to rip through, and he'll just start leaving, little telltale signs, usually like chest high on a trail that's really got a lot of saplings and some big trees around. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, exactly. And I've used them in areas that particularly bucks don't make like a lot of sign.
Yeah.
And I've used these little tick marks to determine like areas. I'm going to sneeze in a second here. To determine areas where sorry. Thank you. Where they're coming out of bedding when they're not making rubs. And I found the bed, and I think it's a buck bed, and they're exiting that bedding. So I'm gonna share this screen. This is a video I made for the hunting beast a while ago. But you see those little tiny taps there?
Right there.
That was a buck exiting this cover, and he just barely touching this stuff.
Yep.
Basically, I go from finding the bed back here, which was a really large bed, low cover, to just seeing him. That's an aggressive one, even, but like just seeing him barely touch some of these little saplings in here. That's a straight up rub, but he is just barely touching that stuff as he's going through.
Yes,
and that was a pretty dang good buck.
Yeah, I find that in the early season a lot when you got there's a lot of undergrowth, a lot of briars. I'll get that coming into cattails sometimes because you got cattails, then you got like those little, I call them like whips coming in up, and then as soon as they come through that, because they got cattails on their antlers, and they got other stuff, so they'll shake it off sometimes, and usually it's in trees that are not going to move when they shake their head off. But yeah, it's one of those things that I don't even know where I picked that up at. I think a trapper. I don't know, my buddy John's friend, a really good trapper, told me that. But yeah, but I've been noticing that for years. And I showed Clint Campbell. We were in the mountains one time. And he was like, I was like, oh yeah, look, the buck's coming through here. It's like, how do you know? It's like, look, tick marks. It's like these little, it was like shoulder width trees, like that size coming through, and you can see where he's coming through because he has to like dip his head back and forth to get through the stuff, and just stabbing.
It seems like like stabbing it, just like they can't get their rack through without tapping something. I called them tree taps at the time, but tick marks, tree tap, like similar thing, same thing really, but just different terminology for it. But yeah, I mean they just can't get through there without tapping something or hitting it.
Like your bucks moving, usually their rack's kind of down, as they're going through thick stuff, and their heads are bobbing back and forth, and they're going to run into stuff. It's like I find it in mountain laurel too. If you look real hard in mountain laurel, you'll see it. Like it's almost like somebody stabs a screwdriver or an awl into the laurel. Yeah. You're like, that's a time mark right there. Like he's coming through, and it's like that because I've seen him get stopped in that mountain laurel before. Like I know what's happening, and he hits something. And it's like, oh shit, like it's like he can't go any further because he just impaled into a section of mountain laurel. And he's got to back out. And that's usually when you see the laurel shake, and people are like, oh, he's making a rub. No, he probably got jammed up in that stuff. And he's like, motherfucker. It's like gets a little frustrated, and he's like, no. I see a lot of times when it happens, I'll see him jump out of that thick cover just on because it's like, I'm tired of this, man. Like sometimes you just see it. I see it in clear cuts too. There's just like so much effort to come through this clear cut, and they're like, fuck it, man, I'm out. I was like, I'm just gonna walk to your path because they're safe coming going some of them spots. So usually they'll let their guard down.
Like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just such a good thing to like slow down, take your time, find it out. I think it's really helpful. Another thing I want to touch on, this terminology I've kind of become familiar with the last few years is doe rubs. And people will say these doe rubs are essentially rubs made by bucks, obviously, but to mark a doe in heat. Now, I haven't really clung to that terminology, and I don't think bucks make a rub. I don't know. Let me have you answer this, but is there what's your belief on doe rubs, and do you think that there is a rub that will look different, particularly if it is a rub for a doe?
No, I mean, said for me, if I think like a doe rubs, I think of signpost rubs because usually they're in the high concentration of doe areas. Whenever I find like, and I don't know even term is it how blood one of the track
Yeah.
guys, they're signpost rubs. You know, I find whenever I find signpost rubs, usually it's a connection to doe bedding. If they're super close, or that's where they're intersecting between two sections of lots happening right there. Because I find with like I said, the signpost rubs, there's never any scrapes around. It's always just rubs. At least me personally, I never see signpost rubs and then like a scrape. It's always, cluster, and usually they're like hit the one spot. They're all different directions, and I've ran cameras, and the bucks literally come from all different directions. But there's so many does bedding in this weird like triangle shape, and it's just a highway. These bucks are using like 5 trails, but I don't know. Every time I get good action with does and rubs, usually it's historical signpost caliber rubs. Me personally, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm right with you on that, man. I don't really think that a buck rubs in necessarily a particular way just because a doe can't eat, unless it's just a bunch of aggression right outside the doe bedding area. Then I can kind of understand where that's coming from them. But
Yeah, I said I ran, and what sucks too, what's terrible about social media, like I used to post pictures of my rubs and I used to break down rubs and stuff like that. I don't do it anymore because people have literally, they'll screenshot it and they go out and they'll find that rub,
They're
and
douchebags.
oh yeah,
and it's
no, that
like,
happens all the time.
so it's like I got, and I used to love doing that, but I'm like, it stinks like scrapes, like tracks. Like I'll post pictures of tracks. That's pretty much all I do now. But I don't post anything about scrapes or rubs because somebody has seen that. I live in populated state. The buck sign I'm finding is been found before. It's not like I'm like in Montana, like, oh wow, like I'm 8 miles deep. Like I'm going to be hunting 400-acre piece or 500-acre piece. There's 4 other guys hunting it. Like it's like somebody's seen that rub before. Because I get, and speaking of like rubs and bucks, like. Some bucks not rubbing, rubs draw human attention.
Yep.
It's like a magnet. It's a light. Like I said, you see that giant rub in the woods, you're going to it no matter what you're doing. Even in the dark, you're walking on the headlamp, you see a rub, you're like, well, I'm gonna go check out this rub. You can't help it. And it's like one of those things because you have to see it. At least for me. So it's like, and I find some of these older bucks, they don't rub that much anymore because probably like the danger, or rub near their bedding because of danger. Because
I wonder if that's like they've adapted to knowing, like if they consciously make that choice, or they're just like, all right, the deer that are doing this are dying out, and the ones that are predispositioned to not do this are the ones surviving.
Yeah.
I wonder if they're making the choice, or if they're just like naturally the ones that are living.
Evolution, man. Like how I was hunting 10 years ago, like before like the whole social media like and YouTube like blew out. Like I was a bed hunter, like I hunted like Dan. I'm not Dan's level by any means. I hunted singular beds in the marsh. I had it all to myself. There was no one out there. I had zero competition. Now that's where everybody hunts. Like the deer have actually completely changed in some spots. Like there's no big bucks anymore because the amount of human sign. Those bucks are like, man, I'm just going down the street where nobody's bothering me. It's like that. You spend 5 years breaking down a piece, like, oh man, I got this down, and then boom, somebody comes in, ladder stand, corn pile, sweet potatoes, or they just go to the marsh, and it's like a light switch. They're gone, and it's like because there's plenty of places somewhere else. It's not like an urban environment. Like I hunt, up in New York City limit type stuff. There's only so many woodlots they can live in. So it's like you go in there, like they're just going to be back there tomorrow because there's the only place to go. Well, here they're just going to go across the street where I can't hunt. They're forced to move.
All right. So I got to ask you, this is actually a question I wanted to ask you. So perfect segue. You talked about rubs being irresistible to the human eye. Have you ever made fake rubs to maybe funnel people in other areas?
Well, I've made rubs and sprayed pre-orbital, and I've had those come in and check them out. I've never had bucks when I ran camera stuff on them. I've never altered buck movement by making a rub.
I'm talking about altering human movement.
No,
No?
I mean, I would have to carry a rack around with me, and I don't necessarily do that because
Okay.
I've
Right.
seen other people make rubs, because you look at it, you know, like I'm a mechanic by trade, so it's like I can figure things out. I look at a rub, it's like, that's not a deer. Like the shavings and ground don't, like, it's somebody has like a knife and they're making like something and spraying scent on it, slime. I've seen some weird stuff put on trees before. I'm like, that's a human trying to make a rub, trying to get to go to it.
I did that one time with a stick with a buddy, a climbing stick, and we made this rub right off of the parking lot, like right on a steep slope. And we met a guy a week later that had a crossbow and was vaping while he was hunting. And he's like, man, he's like, I seen big ass bucks down here. I seen the sign, you know, it says I seen big rubs right here. And we're like, yeah. And he's like, and it's pouring rain. He's like, you know, it was hot last week. I think I'm gonna pick them off as they come get the water down there. And he just like, he's hunting right off the road, clearly hunting the rub we made. And we're like, we did not think that would fool a single soul. Like, it was the funniest thing. So now, don't be offended, Southern people, if you hear me throw in a fake Southern accent, because it's a habit. Because in college, every time that we referenced some dork in the woods, it was like Vaping Jimmy or whatever we called him. Was this dude that was the only Southern guy we'd ever seen in that area of Wisconsin, with the exception of the guy that I've met that's become my friend now. But he just was the goofiest dude, and we'd always see him out there. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna pick them off as they come to the water, and it was just like,
Yeah,
that's the meme for forever now.
there's a business opportunity right there. You guys should have
Oh no.
a fake antler rub kit. You know, like a pour one you can put in your pack and make rubs.
Yeah.
Did you see that product that they
Aroma.
have fake rubs that you can put on trees?
Yes. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
I commented if they release norepinephrine, and I'd be interested in seeing the response.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, as much as I enjoy social media sometimes, but sometimes it's like, because I New Jersey can be a rough state. There's a lot of a-holes just in general.
I mean, you're there, so
exactly. You know, now you throw on the social media aspect of things and the push to create content. I think people are they're killing anything to create content.
Oh,
Like,
dude.
and it's like, because that's getting the likes and the views, and it's like, I know some guys that are phenomenal hunters, and they've really like downgraded their abilities because they're filming and they're trying to. I mean, not that I'm anybody special. Like, I still don't believe I have a platform. I just want to throw that out there. Like, I don't feel I've done anything that warrants a platform for me to speak on deer, but yet here I am speaking on deer on a regular basis. But there's guys that are way better than me. They've been like, but now the social media part of it, like, they've really downgraded their game, and they're shooting subpar bucks just so they can push a product or get product. And I'm like, man, like, you're better than that. You know, like, you don't need to kill a big buck every year. Like, you don't. Like, nope. If you're killing, I mean, if you're in a state like mine, if you're killing 2 or 3 giant bucks every year, I'm going to say you're pushing probably the legality of it on a. You're really getting in that gray area, because it is tough to shoot a 3 or 4 year buck numerous ones a year in heavily pressured states on public. You know, I'm a firm believer. I'll stand, like, I'll die on that shield, because I know some more guys that are like, and I know what they're doing. It's like, hey, that's not my speed, but we both know what you're doing is not.
Not
So
kosher.
yeah,
Seems like we've seen a few people here lately that no matter what they do and where they go, they're just walking out with 150-inch deer plus. And that's probably on the smaller side.
yeah,
We see a lot of that.
yeah, and it's a shame because like they're killing for I guess killing for content.
Yeah.
Um, it's like for me, like like I've it's been a few years since I've shot a buck, and it's like it's not like a lack of trying, like I wounded 3 last year, so it's like I didn't kill, like I hit 3 and they all lived, One's got a broken leg, so I see him next year, I'll know what he is, because his front his front knuckle is broken,
It's going to have a drop time.
yeah, probably, so it's like uh it's a shame because you're losing that, like I'm hunting, like I wasn't a trophy hunter. I was a meat hunter that got into targeting older deer. Like I had like a nice long like I said, it took me 20 years to shoot a Papillon deer. It wasn't like I wasn't trying. Like I missed a lot, I wounded a lot. It was like, but it took me like a long time, but I'm grateful for that. I learned, and I adjusted, and then I made, adjustments every year to get better, and guys just, I think people want to jump the line, so to speak.
I agree. That
They'll do
instant
anything for-
gratification, the the endorphin release and everything when you post that picture on social media. And
I
mean,
think it's pretty obvious who's not doing it for the right reasons. Like
Yeah.
it's just I feel like if you've been around at all, or if you understand the reasons that you're doing it yourselves, it's pretty clear to the people that are not genuine.
Well, look what they're doing with, like I hunt Delaware, you can't bait or use trail cameras. And I was getting New Hampshire trucks in Delaware because people are putting cell cameras up and all that stuff. Like now it is the 1st September, it's a lot quieter in Delaware than
ooh,
it was in years past.
that's
because
awesome.
because that camera, oh wait, I don't have a camera. Like, and I like it because you can't bait, which is nice. Like I'm 5 minutes from Delaware, so I can jump over the bridge, and there's a few spots close to the bridge, and 30 minutes I can be hunting. But deer in public have to do what deer do normally. It's nice.
Yeah.
It's like cell camera, bait pile, ladder
Oh
stand.
God.
Like it's prevalent, and so it's like sometimes it sucks because it's like I just want to hunt. Like I love going to PA, like hunting with Johnny, or anywhere where deer are just deer. It's a lot more enjoyable to me because you don't have outside forces, altering deer movement.
I actually spoke with Jake Bush about this exact subject yesterday, like people cutting corners and stuff. And I think like dudes who get up early to go scout, call off work to go scout, take vacation days to go scout, spend a weekend for a scouting trip, wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning and drive 3 hours to scout. Those are the kind of people like, and I know I'm sitting here with 2 of those guys. Like you can tell all the time, like the dudes that are constantly scouting, you know those guys, like whether they fail or succeed, it's probably real. And then again, they're constantly talking and nerding out like we are now. Like, and then you got the dudes that like drone them up, use thermals,
Oh no.
buy pins from their buddies or what, they got a network of buddies and we got
All right. It's getting a little personal.
no. I mean, it's really
I'm messing with you.
It's just interesting because when you get into this side of the industry or whatever, and you start, you have people speak at your show, you have people on the podcast,
or you have people that only hunt waypoints that they got from other people.
Yeah,
they go out of state.
It's frustrating because you have them as a guest speaker or whatever, and then you're like, well, shit, I thought you were a dog, man. Well, I mean, they could be anything. They could be on the podcast.
I would say you have them as a guest speaker at any expo because we've seen it. We've more heard the examples than anything. We vet our guest speakers really well, but like we've more heard like that. Did you know about that guy? And we're like, it's why we didn't invite him. Like,
yeah, and I'm not referring to like any one person or anything, but
right.
It is very,
you just
very
see it in general.
Like, there are a few people I've heard, and I'm like, oh shit, oh man.
So how does the listener take that? In my opinion, what you should do is realize that you're a lot closer to one of these guys that you elevate on a podium than you think.
Yes.
And
Don't
that,
put on a pedestal. Don't put anybody.
oh my
Yeah.
gosh, no, please no.
And here, like the Midwest guys, like guys that from Jersey, like I tell people like PA and Jersey, like guys that go to Iowa and they'll kill big bucks because there's a lot of big bucks to be killed. You know, they might not shoot a 200 incher, but they'll shoot a 140-inch deer. Now, same with elk hunting. Like guys probably say they'll go out to kill elk, you know, on public land. You don't see many people from Iowa driving all the way
No.
to go hunt New Jersey, you know, or Rhode Island or Massachusetts somewhere where it's because it's a completely different ballgame. You know, like
the thing is too, and I will say to make sure that not all of our Midwest listeners are triggered, there's a difference between a big buck and a mature buck. There's a lot of people that come from the South in particular that say, well, I can go to the Midwest and I can kill mature buck all day long. And they kill 115, 120. And we're like, no, that's a big buck. That's not a mature buck. Like just because it has a frame doesn't mean that it's a mature buck. So like you killing that, you know, 120 and the Mecca is like me killing an 80-inch deer where you're at, you know, there's a difference between a mature, but the density of mature bucks in those states is much higher. And I will say, even if the density of mature bucks isn't much higher, in some cases, the size class and genetics are much higher. Yeah. So like the nutrition and the size class and genetics, that you can have a lot more 2-year-olds running around. Those 2-year-olds are bigger than anything you might ever wish to shoot. And your state is a 5-year-old, right? But like, you know, that might be the 1%, but it doesn't mean you're shooting a mature buck. And that doesn't mean that the guy up north is not going to struggle, because the guy up north is going to be shooting for his 1%er, which is him passing on the buck that you just shot and are bragging about.
Well, that's like, I always like Clint, and you got to hunt Iowa. My fear of me going to Iowa or somewhere spend all this time, because Iowa's a hike for me. It's like the 20 plus to drive there. I know for a fact I couldn't pass on a 130. Couldn't do it, because it's hard to see 130 here in Jersey on a regular basis. If I'm going out there and there's like 5 of them, I'm going to shoot the first one to see, because, well, I've literally let mature deer walk. I want something bigger. There's not always a bigger deer around the corner. I'm like, I have no self-control. I go, then all the time go to Iowa. It's like first day morning, 120. I'd probably shoot it, because I get excited when I see 120-inch deer.
Yeah.
I would need someone behind me filming me going, no, don't do it. Don't. Because if it was just me, I'm like, oh, this is happening. And
you should freaking do it. You should freaking do it. You should just do what makes you happy.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for the experience. You listen to there's a guy, he started Elk 101, I think it is. Kind of got big around the time Born and Raised got big. Corey Jacobson. And he talked about hunting primo units in like Arizona and all that. And it's like, man, I'm passing 300-inch bulls that are screaming in my face because I'm looking for a 350, 360 bull, and then it never comes. And he's like, I had everything an elk hunter could ever want right here.
Yeah.
And I passed it up. Why? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like to me, if you're jacked out of your mind, shoot the deer.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how big it is.
Yeah.
You know?
Like speed, like my oldest deer I killed, he was 6.5. He was 115 inches, mountain deer, 6.5. 117 inches or something. And my biggest, you know, I shot him, he's 139 inches gross. I got him aged, he was 3.5, and I shot him close to my house. And I took him to the taxidermist. My taxidermist at the time was like, if I went out the Midwest, I'm like, no, that's Jersey deer. He couldn't believe it, how short, stocky, and big he was for being 3.5. He was
wow.
See that? I was like, he's just that genetic anomaly. And where
another young buck with good potential killed early by Greg Litzinger. I'm just kidding. Just like that Corey Godard kid, the one he killed the other day. Oh my God, just milk still dripping from the lips of that 180. You know.
I'm gonna make sure he listens to this so he can.
I know. I had to listen to the end, Corey.
And it's weird, like how the age structure in certain states. You know, like PA is popping off right now. Age structure is fantastic. There's a lot of big deer in PA.
Yeah.
You know, certain parts of Maryland, certain parts of Delaware. There's like
Oh.
little pockets of big
Just-
deer. It's like, man, this is nice, you know. And then like certain parts of New Jersey, they're like Hunterdon County. That seems to be where all the big deer are getting killed. It used to be Monmouth, kind of transitioned into Hunterdon County. They got really good soil, really good genetics. You know, it's a
And-
weird.
and-
It's
We
a
got to
weird.
get you to be more secretive, Greg.
Right. And yeah, Greg, even in your freaking presentation, your seminar, I was like,
Light
I was
it
like,
on
quit
fire.
giving away your spots, Greg. But even to your point that you made earlier, Chris, like, you know, there, you may be in an area with poor genetics, but you might have to, and there might be one buck that's 7, you know, that
Yeah.
it's going to be a big buck no matter what. You know?
Age differences. You know, you can always, you might not shoot a 180, but I guarantee you every woodlot has a deer that's 4 or 5 years old. So you go on, like for me, I try to target a deer that looks beat up when he's coming in. He looks weathered. Because anybody's hunting long enough.
4 up ears.
Yep, he's 5 or 6 years old. You know, early season, he's going to have that sway back, and he's just going to look physically bigger. And come the rut, he's just going to look crazy. And then like late season, he usually has a limp, a gimp, you know, because he's tired.
Oh,
You're like,
yeah.
that's like, he's an old deer. He might only be 100 inches. I will shoot that deer all day long.
Stiff hips.
Yep.
The other thing that I marvel at too is I think people really think that when they kill a deer, they're just going to become like rich and famous. And I don't know, barring like a world record,
Yeah.
I just don't like. I mean, I killed one of the most unique and a very big deer last year. You know, one of the most unique deer, maybe the most unique in the country. And I'm not rich, famous, or an authority on deer.
Yeah.
Like I'm still just Chris. So you're not like, no, that's not going to happen. So freaking have fun, man. Like if you're jacked up, shoot the deer.
Is that
Yeah. So, and to touch on the comparison thief of joy point
Yeah.
that we were making, I recently saw this speech by Roger Federer, who is arguably the GOAT of tennis.
Yes.
And the guy's record in tennis, he has won 1,526 singles matches in his career. So he won them, or in 1,526 single matches that he's played, he's won 1,251. So he has won over about 80% of all the matches he's ever done. Now, if you broke down all of his points, like what percentage of points do you think that guy won if he won 80% of his matches? You'd think like 80% of the points, right?
not barely?
54%.
Oh, wow.
He won 4% more than his opponents did to be one of the greatest of all time and have one of the greatest winning percentages of all time.
He hung on every time.
And I was just talking with Vince Battiata about this. I just did a podcast with him right before this, and he was saying like, man, I feel like I'm right there all the time, and I just do something little screwed up. And he went through 9 examples of just something little that screwed it up. And it's like, dude, that is the difference, though. It is the 4%. It's the tiny difference that it's the one chance decision, the one single point that's the difference between you killing and not. So like, don't worry about if you're not in your mind there yet. That kill of the deer is not the metric. It's you just got to be out there wholehearted and enjoying it, and do it for you, and then you'll never burn out, and you'll just keep getting better.
That's like I said, 19 years to kill a pope deer. Like I know a thing or two about struggling for people that I'm not getting there. Like I killed a lot of 80, 90 inch deer. It got to the point where it's like, this is not enjoying. Like I go out, I can shoot them. You know, it's like, it was no fun for me. It's like, so I became an older deer hunter, I guess, antler hunter, because usually older deer have bigger antlers. So it's like because I needed more of a challenge. And I'll never forget this guy around here, Rich. He shot a lot of big deer when I was younger. And he was like, as soon as you kill your first one, it gets easier. And I shit you not, I killed that one there. And then I went for like the next 6 years in a row, tagging out, because you put so much burden on yourself to kill that one.
Yeah.
And you just, you know, it's like that scene in Tommy Boy where he's just like freaking out, you know, he's killing the tail because he's spazzing out. Like, you just need to let it happen when it happens. It might take you 20 years. That's okay. It might take you 2 years, you know, but it's like the guy that's taken 10 or 15 years to do it outside Jacob, you don't count this one, you know? So for us. This is for
Is
us.
he down?
Yeah, this is for us mere mortals. You know.
Yeah, shut up.
That it takes a long time to reach a certain pinnacle. Like usually they can stay on a lot longer because they know the struggle. They got a nice solid foundation. You know, if you come out of the gate and shoot a booner, you're chasing that dragon forever. You're never going to chase. You're never going to reach that again. And those guys go out and go every which way.
That failure and that finding your own success by your own means is what builds the confidence. When you went through that grind and you either stuck out for your goal or you are at your upper echelon right now, like you're after booners, but you built that, you forged that weapon in the fires of 120s and 115s and 80s and spikes, and you just busted ass and failed over and over again. You're going to have a lot more experience under your belt and a lot more confidence when it comes time to, release that mouth tab on the booner.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, we'll all go nuts, Greg.
If that happens, I just have to go dark for a while because I'm just going to just revel in the moment. Like I'm
the last question I'm going to ask you, Greg, 1 second, is what kind of rub does this buck make?
Funky.
A funky one.
A smooth side. He's going to rub one side.
Okay.
He might get some tick marks going through some brush, but that's about it.
The funny thing I think of, like whenever I think about this deer, we named him Jerry.
He
did rub. He's got sinew on the base of one of his antlers.
But
and bloodshot eyes.
Old, he's gonna be funky, man. That's gonna be a cool deer if he makes it a few years.
Let's hope so.
That last.
Y'all make sure you tune in.
That was several years ago.
Check this deer out.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
That's pretty sick. Well, boys, we've taught people how to believe in themselves, taught them how to taught them how to read rubs and be good people.
Yes.
So with that being said, I think this is a perfect time to close it out. Greg, we really appreciate you being a part of this. This is a really important series to us, and we appreciate you, dude. So thanks for being a part of it.
Thank you.
This has been the Whitetail Apprentice series, brought to you by Chris and Jacob. Y'all have a good night. See ya.